Three, two, one, here we go. I'm your host, Garrett Bulkus, and today is episode 189 of the Last Breath Huntcast. Thank you for tuning in. Man, we're getting close to 200. That's kind of a neat little mark to creep up on. We should get there by the end of hunting season for sure. So today we are talking about my high country archery velvet mule deer hunt that actually just happened not too long ago. And before we get into it, I just want to take some time before the ad reads, before anything else, to open up and just say thank you so much to Robert Hawk and to Shane Jones. Those guys live out there and they put in a ton of work for me. They helped me not only before the hunt, but during the hunt. And literally, I could not have done it without those guys. Whether it's the pack in, the knowledge that they share, just the gear that they let me know what is necessary and essential for these style of hunting. Because being a flatlander, when it comes to whitetails, I'd say I've got a pretty good lick on them. And I know what I need, how to train, etc. When it comes to the Western sphere, I've been doing it for coming up on a decade now. But as I've learned, like there's a big difference between hunting, say, outfitted for antelope to going into elk to going into mule deer and then doing the whole public land stuff. So this hunt was a public land, completely walk-in unit. We saw probably 50 other people out there, numerous other hunters, and a ton of hikers. We actually had horse riders come probably 40, 50 yards from our camp. They didn't even know we were there, but just out lollygagging, riding around. So this was a 100% non-guided. Well, I say that. Robert did some scouting beforehand, and Shane and him really kind of, like I said, helped me along the way there. But this was on a public unit in Colorado. So this is something that anybody that's listening can do. I mean, it takes a ton of work, and it takes some specialized gear to make sure you can get there, and some glass to be able to find these things. But dude, this is a hunt that anybody listening to this show can 100% do. So now that we got the thank you out of the way to Robert and Shane, we're going to go ahead and do our ad reads really quick. So for starters, we're going to start with Moultrie Mobile. They're the title sponsor of this podcast. I have been running the new cameras that they've been pushing out, and like, dude, the Edge and the Edge Pro specifically are second to none. The other thing that I want to talk about right now is that while I was away, I had an issue with one of my cameras. On my way back, I called the Moultrie Mobile customer service team. They were fantastic. The gal that I got a hold of was some Southern Belle. She walked me through everything. She actually gave me photos to kind of, I guess, smooth things over a bit on one of my cameras that had been malfunctioning, and did everything in her power to make it right and actually remedied the problem. So this is a no bullshit, 100% honest thing. Like, calling their customer service line, their agents know what they're doing. They're there to help. And as long as you give them respect, I think you're going to find that they're going to help you to the nth degree. Obviously, if you call them and you're disgruntled and you're just pissed off and being a dick, you're probably not going to get top-notch customer service. But just go in there with a level head and talk to these people, and they're going to help you out. So, again, Moultrie Mobile, been working with them for a long time. Love them. Next is Tompkins Taxidermy. Tompkins, Wayne is working on Hershey's. It'll be done soon. Dude, he killed that blind eye of his. I'm going to send pictures and throw them up on the inner circle and post them when he gets it done. But Hershey's was the buck I killed last year, a true warrior that had a blind eye. And literally, like, you couldn't see, he couldn't see out of his one eye. It was bulged, it was protruded, and it was just not going to work. And so I'm telling you, man, Wayne knocked it out of the park. He colored that eye. He's going to get it to look exactly how it did when I killed him, and it's going to look awesome. Next is Dark Knight Outdoors. Jamie Hoffman over there. Thermal season is right around the corner. You need to get a hold of him. He's got some hellacious specials on scopes right now and some used inventory that he's wanting to move. So call him, get him on the phone, and you will get a fantastic deal. Lastly is Pulsar. Been working with them now for a little while. It's about time for me to stop saying that. But I've been running their Duo. I'm getting ready to probably trade that out. The Duo was really nice, and I love the fact that it bridges the gap between thermal hunting and daytime hunting. But I've got a rig dedicated just for nighttime, and I'm going to switch it out to a dedicated thermal scope. and I'm excited to see what scope I decide to switch out on. But now that we got through that, we paid the bills. I'm going to hit you with a quote of the day, and this one kind of hits a little home. It is you only understand the power of one day when you're threatened with never having another one. And everybody's got hardships. Everybody goes through shit, and you got to claw through the mud every once in a while. And I'm sure that'll resonate with a lot of people out there, that you realize that, man, tomorrow is a gift. It's not guaranteed. And I've kind of embraced that. And on my way home from hunting in Colorado, A, with some of my best friends, but B, I kind of looked back over the last several years, and I've been really lucky. I mean, you could call it blessed. I'm not saying I'm super religious by any means, but I mean, just even going to Texas in March with Wayne and the bunch of guys down there, I mean, it just been doing things that I'm really lucky to be able to get to do with people that I love doing it with. And I've had some pretty awesome experiences. As I sit in this shed, which is something not everybody even has, but I'm looking at the elk, the whitetail, the bear, my mule deer, turkeys, whitetails, you name it, dude. I've been really lucky. And I guess my kind of concept moving forward is that I'm just going to make sure that I have one of those style of trips, at least one every single year. I'm going to go west. I'm going to go south. I'm going to go east. I don't care where I'm going, but as long as I'm going there with people that I care about and that I want to make that memory with, that's what's important to me. So I can tell you right now, like I talked to Logan about it, my wife, and we're just going to start accounting for it. We're going to budget for it, and I'm damn sure going to be doing something like that every year, as long as I can, because like this trip, I'll never forget it. Lastly, before we get in the episode, there's some people that I just want to thank, and these are people that knew I was going on the trip and that congratulated me, wished me good luck, were some of the first people to call or text or had voicemails when I got into service. And it just means a lot, because whether it's a text message or a phone call, I mean, they took time out of their day to do that. So I'll rattle them off really quick. First, my best friend, my dad, talked to him probably 15 of the 17 hours on the ride home. Next is my wife. She's amazing. Don't know how I buffaloed her into marrying me. Mike Lemansky, Cody Jenkins, Jake Wiedemeyer, Pat Partlow, Robbie Rice, Brian Greer, Wayne Tompkins, Michael Daniel, Mason Tevis, Parker Olson, Chaz Schrupp, Jim and Allie, Golly, and Alan Yates. I mean, those are, and I might be missing people, but those are people, like I said, that took time out of their day, that had my number. Now, there's a ton of people in the inner circle that were amazing, supportive, and congratulative. I don't think that's a real word, congratulative. And, I know you don't have my cell phone, so thank you. And Jarrett Moskwa of the Michigan show, he was awesome too, man. So all those people, just want to say thanks. I notice it. It means a lot. And it's pretty crazy what a little text message or a phone call can do to just let people know you care. Now that this has been a long-winded intro, so to speak, we're going to get into this. Actually, I recorded this podcast with Robert just a couple days after I killed my mule deer. I stuck around, and he was trying to kill a freaking awesome mule deer, and I was hunting with him and filming him, and he actually kind of had to give it up. He is helping one of his best friends out there with a very, very, very hard-to-get elk tag. It's taken James's buddy like 22 years, I think, to draw this tag. So they're out looking for giants. The pictures that Robert has sent me on the bulls they've passed would make me pee down my leg. So this guy has got balls that he can carry in a wheelbarrow, because he's letting giant elk walk. So hopefully he fills that tag, and you enjoy this podcast. But thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Are you ready, Robert?
I'm ready.
All right, so here we go. We are talking about Colorado 2023, my velvet mule deer hunt, high country to boot. And Shane took off a little bit early, but now I've just got Robert sitting across from me, and we're going to talk about how it all happened. So, Bob, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Bob is really personable, if you couldn't tell. He's a man of just so many words. So I'm going to have to pry it out of him today. What are you doing over there?
Calibrate my watch.
To what?
North.
So I guess we'll start like you started scouting well before I came out, didn't you?
Yeah, probably not as early as I wanted, but it's been so hot here lately. And then kids, and we had their fair, and then they go back to school. But I did get out a few times and the scouting around here in the low country is pretty easy. I was driving around looking out of the truck, walking 200 yards and getting the spot and scope out. But did a couple pretty good hikes back in the backcountry on both sides of the unit. And then I didn't really see anything great in the beginning. So we essentially we're kind of going into it blind and just went to a spot that I had scouted and seen a few bucks in. I don't know, what was that, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, and this was a spot that you've hunted before. Like you and your other local buddies have been there and know like it holds deer.
Yeah, historically it does. And when I say that, it had been like 19 years since I've been in there. But it seems like one of them spots that I didn't really realize until I hiked in there and thought about us going there that it had really been that long, because it seems like it was on my mind every year when I had an archery tag or knew somebody that had one, was to go in there. And I guess just time kind of slipped away, and I'll be dang if it wasn't 19 years before I made it back in there. And it's a cool spot, and I don't know, a lot of spots around here, if you've seen big deer there before, there's a dang good chance there's going to be, deer or big deer in the same spot, I guess, apparently even 19, 20 years later.
Right. So, to give an idea, like the unit that I have is pretty big, and it's like a big mountain, right? So there's multiple sides to it. And you're talking about like you hiked into this spot. I mean, what is it, 2 miles to the glassing point or further from where we glassed?
Where I mapped it from the trailhead when I hiked in, I set my tracker, and it's a little over 2.6, and I can't remember, 1,800 feet elevation or something.
From the trailhead.
From the trailhead.
And then the other side, that's even a harder hike.
Yeah, it's probably maybe not as much elevation to where we glassed from, but it's
a long ways.
It's a long ways to walk, and that's kind of why I decided to go around the other way, a little more conducive to archery hunting. This side over here, you can see a lot, and it's a pretty good hike to where we glass from. But the problem with it is you're looking at deer 2 miles, miles in this country really doesn't matter. We kind of go more by hours. So a lot of those deer you're looking at are 3.5 to 4 hours away before you do a stalk. And that's why I decided maybe we should go around the other side, because we're glassing, anywhere from where we're sitting to, 1,000, maybe 1,200 yards away, so we can kind of keep an eye on them and get a stalk in right then, as opposed to packing up camp and relocating camp and it being a, next evening, next morning kind of deal.
And hope they're still there.
Yeah, exactly. And then the problem with this side is once you leave the good glassing spots, you start limiting what you can see, and then it's kind of just a guess where they may or may be. Or sometimes you can figure it out and get on a ridge and maybe see across, but it's just tough on this side. It's not great for archery.
Right. And like that was even like where we were. I mean, mind you, you popped my cherry for another Western check mark, but it's like, even though the deer are there in the morning, they may not be there in the evening, even though you put them to bed. I mean, we saw that on our hunt when we were in there. It's crazy how much different they move from morning to evening, or how much better you can just even pick them apart.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the evenings here, we've been fighting that full moon a little bit. Even up there where it was cool. Well, I don't know. We didn't really know, but I'm saying high 60s, mid 60s probably.
During the day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't hot, but it wasn't chilly. The mornings had a little bit of briskness to them, but I don't even know if it ever really froze in the morning.
No, and I think it was more, we didn't have as big a like temperature flux as we do down here, where like right now we're in the mid 80s during the day and 50 at night. I think up there it was maybe mid 60s and then 40.
Right.
Or whatever. So, but that full moon was, I think the evenings were, I don't know. And that's the thing in the high country. The deer can be there and be on the other side of a tree and you don't know it. But
Well, dude, the moon was so bright. Like, remember the first night we camped? Like, I literally woke up. I was like, damn, Robert's got his light like shining on my tent.
and I was thinking the same thing. I thought Garrett like left his headlamp on and left it sitting outside shining towards my tent. And I was like, what the heck is on? Or I thought my phone was on or something. It was bright in there.
Or you remember you woke up and you're like, dude, it was so bright I could see my watch without illuminating it.
Yeah, I didn't even hit the light and looked at my watch. It was like 2:30 in the morning, and I didn't even have to hit the light to see what time it was.
And you know, I don't know. Who knows how much that affects deer movement? You know, we can't see what they're doing at night, but it definitely seemed like the evenings they hardly moved at all. I mean, just barely enough on that one evening that we could tell that you could tell that they were up there.
Yeah, and it was the same thing in the low country. I think everything was, waiting until we couldn't see anymore, and then they were coming out and
Yeah, because it's just like daylight.
yeah, or waiting. It takes whatever 45 minutes or an hour for the moon to pop up after the sun goes down, and then I think they were coming out because we didn't have much action in the evenings. It was actually downright boring after about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
right.
everywhere.
Yeah, and low country is like 7,000 feet. You know, that's a modest statement from somebody that lives at about 700 or 800 feet of elevation. So, okay, so we'll back up. I mean, Friday, get into Colorado. I pretty much, Shane and I meet with Shane, and we deadhead and meet you at your house, do a quick gear check. I pull a ton of stuff out of my bag, thank God. And we immediately take off. And I don't know, we started hiking. It was kind of late because we were worried about getting there in time to glass.
Yeah.
It was right on the edge, actually.
We were only like 3 hours later than I thought we would be. It just, we didn't do anything crazy. I mean, you guys kind of got here at what time we thought.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, we had to go get your license and we did eat a burger, which maybe
I'm
not.
glad we did. Maybe.
I don't know, maybe not the best food choice before you go on a hike like that. But yeah, we were pushing it, and then it just takes a while to drive around to the other side of the unit. I mean, from my house, and I'm kind of on the western side, and we were going clear around to the eastern side, and I don't know, it was an hour and a half
At least
up there, and then we were pretty heavy. I mean, we were all 50 plus pounds going in, so I did it fairly quick when I went and spotted it. But I had binoculars, a spot and scope, and a tripod, and it's amazing in that stuff when you start walking uphill how much, even though you basically kept moving the whole time, but if you're doing 13,000 steps and every step is 4 inches shorter, it makes for a lot more steps when you're heavy.
And that's the thing. Like, I worked my ass off to get ready for the hunt, and like you can't train for that though. You know what I mean? Like my legs are strong and like my lungs are strong, but I don't even know if you'd ever be able to experience. Maybe if you go hunt something crazy like way high, like 12, 14, 15,000 feet, maybe. But like for me, it'll be interesting since I've been here for a little while when I go home to see if like, wow, I can breathe great.
Right. You probably run a marathon.
Yeah. Jump on the treadmill and be like, this is nothing.
Yeah.
But that was humbling to me. And I mean, Shane was feeling it for sure on the way up, and we got to camp. So it took us 2 hours?
Yeah, I think we did it. I think we actually did it in a little. I was expecting 2 hours. I don't know, hour, and which we camp 600-700 yards from the glassing point.
Yeah.
And when I went in to scout it, I was, I don't know, hour and 20 minutes or something was just that. And I don't think we were we're an hour and 45, hour and 50 minutes, just under 2 hours, I think, there to where we got in. And we took a few breaks and stuff, and the good thing was it wasn't that hot.
Right.
We had pretty good cloud cover, and I think that probably saved us 20 minutes. And we were still, I guess I can't speak for everybody else, but I think everybody was the same. I was drenched.
In sweat? Oh my God.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Oh. And so then we set up camp, and that's the thing that's been interesting for me to as I do these backpack hunts with you and get exposed to them more and more, like water is super important.
Yeah.
I mean, every time that we've gone hunting on this backpack style, we've been lucky enough that we have water pretty close, but I know that that's not always the case. Like you have to pack in water or set up camp and go get water and haul it back. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, so we were lucky that we had water close and that the glassing point wasn't far. And we actually we saw other hunters when we were there.
Yeah,
I mean-
I think those guys were hunting elk or something, or they were trying to be kind of. I think where they were at, they could walk off that other side and they can see a lot more country. And I'm not so sure they didn't relocate or something. I don't know. It's just part of it.
To the other basin.
Yeah, or who knows? Maybe they saw something way out there 3 miles and packed up their camp and left. But I don't know. You can't. It does take the wind out of your sails a little bit. You put effort into it, and it's just how it's gotten everywhere. You think you have a honey hole, and there isn't any anymore. Sometimes you got to rub elbows, but that didn't have any factor on what we were doing. Thank God. I mean, it didn't. You never know when somebody's going to go walking through the bottom of the basin, bebopping and whistling. But we didn't have any of that, so
Not there, but we did have like joyriders come through camp.
Yeah, it was just crazy. The amount of people that are out just riding around on horses, not even on trails, and things like that.
Or just that one day we had the people with the dog.
The dog, yeah.
I mean, and it was late.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was like an hour before dark, and it took us. I mean, there's no way they would have made it to the trailhead before dark. I don't think.
No, they were going to walk the last part of it
in dark.
In the dark, and I mean, it's not that far. Like I said, and a lot of this stuff, distance is kind of irrelevant because what, and I guess we'll get to that maybe later. But like what I did this morning was the same distance,
right?
And it took me 30 minutes.
Yeah,
because I mean, I had 50-foot elevation change, not almost 2,000. So, it's just crazy. You said anywhere where there's like a main trail that goes over a pass or connects to another main trail, there's people on it, especially Labor Day weekend.
Right.
And just happened to open
on
the Saturday before Labor Day weekend. So we had all kinds of the hunters and the hikers this weekend, but it was fine.
So we get in, we set up camp, we got our water, we're all doing well. I did try to blow up a pillow that wasn't a pillow, so that was good.
Yeah, it was
a little stupid
awesome.
inflate. When you have a sleeping pad
at 10,000 feet, when you don't have enough air anyway,
there's this stupid little like sack that you're supposed to like catch air in, and then somehow put it into your sleeping. I thought it was a pillow. I was like, oh, sweet, I got an extra pillow.
It only has a 12-inch hole on the bottom of it that he's trying to fill up.
Yeah, it wasn't working so well. So we get in, and that first night we got there kind of late. I mean, not late. We had climbed a glass, but we didn't see anything. Well, we saw elk that very first night.
Saw two bulls.
Which was
sure I saw them.
What? I saw them first, and then so that night we didn't see any deer, and it's like you work all the way to get back there, and we talked about it like, well, we have to go back in the morning, right?
Yeah, and then we have some options from there that aren't
too far.
Too far. I mean, obviously we were going to our big hitter. We were hoping, and it is but we didn't know what we know now. I wasn't super consistent scouting in the evenings. It's just kind of not my thing. And, the kids get out of school and they got sports and stuff, so I don't have a lot of time.
And you're coming out at dark, man.
Yeah, and then, I mean, if it's a 2.5 hour hike in there to Glass,
half drive.
Yeah, then I'm getting home at 10 o'clock for scouting. So we didn't know then. And now, and none of it, I wasn't discouraged. I mean, we were all the way. I was just kind of tired, honestly, so I didn't really want to think about it. I mean, but we did have some other options if there wasn't deer right there, and I mean, where we could leave the camp where it was and check a couple different spots, just a little bit further hike from camp, but no reason to totally relocate. And if that didn't pan out, then we still had the option. That's one thing with not day hunting and taking your stuff with you. We would have moved camp, and we would have found deer somewhere, but
right.
It just would have sucked if it had been the third day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so then we roll over into that next morning, and it's actually the official opener then, right? So right off the bat, you found deer.
Yeah, as soon as we got there, and it was, I mean, we couldn't have seen those deer.
5 minutes
we timed it just right. It just it's kind of a game we play up there. Like you can walk, well, we did. You walk 50 yards from camp and there could be deer. There was a little 2-point or something that kept being right there, but they could be, in between us and the glassing point. So I don't like to be rummaging around, stepping on sticks and stuff in the dark with headlamps on and pop over and they're already within bow range and you can't see your pins,
See, that's the thing that's crazy. Like whitetail hunting back at home, like we get in early,
Right.
Take our time, usually no headlamps. And it's like more or less we want to get in there with the cover of darkness. But out here, it's way more of an advantage to be able to see.
Yeah, they can be anywhere, you don't want to go. There's sometimes where you just, if you've hunted it enough, on your way where you want to go, you're just like, whatever. And, there still could be deer there, but you're just, you still got to get to where you're going. It doesn't do you any good if it's a 2-hour hike to wait until it's daylight and then you get there when everything's already bedded down. So sometimes you just got to plow through it and hope for the best.
So morning one, right? The greenhorn from Illinois is out there on the glassing point. Boom, we spot deer. And
I did see those first. Just so.
Yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the way, actually, Robert saw most of the deer first. I don't want to kid anybody, but I got better and better at it. And so like the interesting thing for me is it wasn't like go time. I mean, Robert will tell you I'm impatient. Like I feel like once we see deer, we got to make a play on them. And the first thing that they were doing is like finding out what deer they were. And that took a little bit of time. But after we figured out there were some deer that were worth going after up there, that's when you like cut me loose, like run along, little child, like go have fun. And that was like, holy shit, crazy. Didn't know what I was doing. It was almost a godsend that I could go up there the first time.
Yeah.
To see like that saddle, because the glassing point's on a knob, and then it bowls out into a big basin. And although it doesn't look steep, it is very steep. And then it gets extremely steep. And that's where these deer were going. I mean, we're in literally cliffs with some pine trees, like a small patch of like greenery and big pines. And so like they sent me off and we figured out there's 3 deer that are worth putting an arrow in up there.
There was what, 8?
8 or 9 bucks.
I think there was 8, and then you saw one on the way, and we figured 9.
Yes. Yep. So there was a big 3-point, which was the kind of the apple of the eye. There was a 3x4. Is that right? And I didn't ever really get a good look at him. And then there was the 4x4, which is the buck that I ended up shooting. And so they stayed at the glassing point to keep tabs on the deer. The deer are working up the mountain to bed. And so I had to go around through like some quaky trees and smaller spruce trees to get across a saddle to start really climbing into the high country. And so I took off and I came out and I was like only 250 yards away from the bucks, but they were still working their way up the mountain. And I knew there's no way that I could walk across the open flat. So I dove back into the trees and there was like 3 little short ridges that I had to go up and down, up and down, up and down. And there was a doe that we didn't even know was there that was like staring at me.
Yeah, she was right where you
wanted to go up.
Essentially what Garrett's saying, like he needed to go, we'll just call it east.
Yeah.
Or west. Garrett was wanting to go west, but the way that it was all happening with the extra deer in there and stuff, it kept bumping him way further north, which is not going up the mountain where the deer are.
No, so I went way around him, and then I like got behind the mountain, quite literally, and started to cut up through. And when I got up to the far, we'll call it the right side, if you're looking at it, if you're staring at it, it'd be the right side, the deer on the left side, the right side of the pine trees, I started cutting up this rock slide, and then all of a sudden I heard deer running, and I turn around, and there is a I don't know, big enough deer for me to draw my bow back, but they're like 70 yards, and they're trotting. They're not like hauling ass. And about 5 does. And then they just stopped at like 127 yards. They didn't know I was there. I thought that I had spooked them. And I was like, oh, shit. It took me like 30 minutes, and I was hustling. It's 30 minutes of going as fast as you can, as quiet as you can. It's not like 30 minutes walking up the trailhead. And I was like, God damn it.
Yeah, and what you didn't know was
the other deer.
Like 4 of the deer actually split, and somehow Garrett got above them, and they went around below him. And he was thinking that was the deer. And it just so happened the 3 biggest deer they didn't go that route. They were taking a different route going up higher, and Garrett was still below them. And so then we got into the whole thing trying to, tell him that through hand signals.
Well, I couldn't even see it.
Yeah, not at that point.
Yeah.
And we couldn't see the deer that he busted out. We were pretty sure we heard him. And, I was just like, oh, maybe bump some deer out of the trees or something, but he's still, way away from the other ones. It's not really hurting anything. And then the doe popped out right where Garrett needed to go. And that was kind of an issue. And then she ended up blowing out straight down the hill.
I think she was the one that, probably took all those deer with her.
Yep.
And, again, I'm really new to this. And I was like, man, first stalk, and I fucked it up. I didn't even,
Right.
really get it. And here I go trudging all the way back, and I get to the gas point. They're like, dude, they're still up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, and we watched them for, we're looking for Garrett the whole time and like looking up on the hill. And we, then they got into the trees and we're wanting to find a bed. And we'd see one, we'd see the other one. And then they kind of started to spread out up there. I don't know if they just kind of all had their beds picked out. And we were looking for Garrett, and then Shane's like, oh, he's right here. And he's back at the glassing point. And I didn't have the heart to tell him to go back up there.
Oh my God. And so that hike was like a half maybe of what it took to actually get him killed.
Right.
And I was like drenched in sweat. And it's what's crazy is like you get to the base of like the mountain. We're already at 10,000 some feet, but you're way off of the peak. And it's like once you get to that point, it's like a whole nother level of hardness, like toughness. I mean, it's not easy going around. And I mean, you could do a good pull where we were with camp and glassing point. You can maybe take a break and you catch your breath in a minute. But when you go up, oh my God.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's horrible. So we went back to camp. It rained. We just kind of hung out and waited till the evening. And that evening we thought that the deer were coming down into that basin to eat because it was loaded with berries and blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, and all kinds of other stuff. So I kind of made a big loop around the basin and got tucked into like a quakey patch.
Yeah, and I think you were 700 and some yards from where we were glassing from, which was kind of the halfway point we thought of where the deer were bedded, but we're going to come off, one of those into that steep off of one of them chutes or something down to where you were.
I think, dude, like that would have been so perfect if they would have worked down.
Yeah.
But they never did. We never
Saw
saw
one buck.
Well,
The buck you killed. That's the only one we saw. He must, and it was early. It was like
5 something.
Yeah, here it gets dark at 8. We're expecting. I don't even remember what time we got there. 5.
It was earlier than
4:30.
Yeah, because Shane took off in the rain like dingus.
Right. And then you and I went up there, and we weren't there that long. And I think it was like 5:40. It gets dark here at 8. And I was like, it's going to be 7:40 before we even see any deer. And it was, like I said, like 5. I'm like, they're already up on their feet. And we saw another doe up on their feet. And I think that buck just got up, munched a little bit, and went back to bed. And then we never saw another deer the rest of the night.
Right. But, man, I don't know. That's like having your cake and eating it too for an Illinois Flatlander, I'm like,
Right.
I woke, stood up and broke a couple branches, had like this little shooting lane. And I'm like, oh man, this is going to be the booze.
Yeah, if it just worked like that every time, but it seems to never work like that. When you think you have the perfect setup, then the deer make you feel stupid.
So day 2, I mean, we go back, we eat, go to bed. Day 2, we wake up, instant coffee, the whole shebang, peak refuel, breakfast. And I think we got there a little earlier, maybe. If not, day 2 was like perfect.
Yeah.
Just twilight.
Yeah, and we stopped the whole water thing. Like, you don't realize, like, seems like every time we cross a creek we're getting water, but every time at camp we're out of water.
Yeah.
It's just so we did stop that morning and
get water.
I think we all
filled up all of our
I think everybody got water because we were pretty much after breakfast and a couple swigs we were all out of water, so we left a little bit early because we walked to the creek with our headlamps on, I think.
Yeah.
And then we were there a touch earlier, I think.
But it was perfect, man.
Yeah.
Like we got there
It was still good.
Immediately Robert's like, yep, there's the deer. And the thing that's kind of interesting between like day 1 and day 2 or like finding the deer is like once you realize they're the deer you want to hunt, there is no having to wait to identify. It's like, yep.
Yeah, and I think that's what maybe cost us a little the morning before because it was an extra when we should have really been getting after them, we didn't know what they were. And
Right.
it just so happened the only deer that we couldn't see were actually the three, that we kind of labeled as the possibilities or shooters. And we could see all those little bucks. And I'm like, man, you don't want to go over there yet. Like, we need to see what these other deer are. And that cost us 20, 25 minutes.
At least.
That, the first day. And then, like you said, the second day, though, when we seen him, we're just like, yep, there's a deer, And because those other deer had split off, it kind of weeded out some eyeballs, which I think was good. And it just, by luck, it was the three shooters, a little buck, and a doe was all that was left. So
Right.
it kind of eliminated, that we needed to look around. It was just once we saw them go,
And that's the other thing that's kind of interesting. Like the mountain deer, there were does sprinkled in with the bucks.
And that's very strange. Like I haven't seen that a lot. I mean, we do, but if it is, it's like
smaller
it's like
bucks.
that. It's a doe here, a doe there,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it still was strange. But that doe still seemed like she was wanting to be the outcast. She was, them bucks would feed right next to each other and stuff like that, and she was around them, but not per se with them.
Yeah. And so see the deer, realize they're heading up pretty much they have like 3 different chutes that they could go up to go to these pines in the high country. And we're like, okay, we watched them go up that one. We knew they were going to be higher. And you guys sent me off, and I'm super glad I grabbed my pack. I pretty much peeled everything out of my pack except for my water bottle, med kit, headlamp, knife, whatever, and take off. And so I get to the saddle area, which again, it was nice that I'd gone there yesterday, the day before, because I knew
Right.
kind of how to get there fast. And popped over, those 2 elk were there, like 40 yards. And I was
Right.
like, oh man, please don't run towards the deer. They didn't. That was luck number 1. They took off away from them. And then it was also nice because I felt like I didn't have to go near as far right, like you said, like north.
Yeah. I
Because-
didn't realize until you showed me on the map the first day where you went. I was like, dude, where were you going? I was
trying to be sneaky.
It was a long route away. They definitely were not going to see him.
And I didn't want to mess it up. I'm like, I got Shane and Robert, 2 of the best hunters I know, like watching me. I was like, you can't fuck this up. And so I get to the base of the mountain and I start going, and then I hit that tree. And like that down tree was where shit went from like an 8 to like an 11. I don't know if it's the elevation mark or what it was, but I mean, I don't know how steep it was, but it was just so steep that I could stand up and touch the mountain. Like,
Yeah, it's borderline hands and knees. Some of it is, and right when you got there, I told Shane, I said, "Here comes the old 5 to 8 steps at a time."
oh, well, yeah, and that's it, because like I got there relatively quick, and then it's like, man, I have my bow in my hand, which was if I were to do it again, I'd throw my bow in my pack, so I have both hands. But again, I guess you don't know.
Yeah,
But
it's like
you
you jumped them deer the day before,
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So like here I am, and it's like, it's not that late. Thank God it was cool, because I would have been sweating even worse. I'm like pouring sweat, and I'm like trying to claw my way up this mountain. And I finally got to like a little bench, and I could look back, and we kind of talked about hand signals, but not really well. Like,
no, not very good at all. We were a little too excited. We maybe should have like 45 seconds,
yeah.
and maybe and. Part of that might have been Shane and I's fault. When we were waiting for Garrett to claw his way up the mountain, we started telling stories and talking with our hands, and then we'd look up, and Garrett would be looking at us in the binoculars, and he'd start going the other way. We're like, no. We were just telling a story, but we accidentally pointed at the direction, so
shit.
maybe the spotters need to work on that a little bit too.
Yeah, and like, so they have spotting scopes, and really, Shane's got a pair of nice Maven 18 power binoculars, and I've got nice binoculars, but they're only 11 power. And so like I'm breathing heavy as shit, like trying to look and see which way they're telling me to go. And you just kind of guess. And so I dumped my pack, and I could tell that they were telling me that the deer were still to the east or south of me. Right. And I'm like, all right, I gotta keep working that way. And it was no joke, like what Robert was saying. Again, I consider myself in decent shape. And it was like, okay, get to that little tree and take a break. And my biggest fear is like, I didn't know exactly how close the deer was, but Like, no joke, dude, 20 yards of climbing that shit, and I was like sucking.
Oh, you can't hardly draw your bow back. You
That-
know what I mean? Like you could, but you're gonna hear your heartbeat in your ears
Oh.
when you do.
That was my number one worry. I'm like, man, I'm going to be just dead out of breath, and I'm going to have to make a shot, and they're not going to be like 20 yards away. I knew it was. I'm like, I'm going to have a poke where I'm like breathing like a fat kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough.
And finally, I got to where I realized the deer weren't on that flat with me. And I knew you guys were telling me to keep pushing to the left. And I got there, and then I had my brain fart because I like came out and I realized like I thought they were below me, but they were above me.
Oh, because we were using the orange sack.
Yeah, well, and you had it placed right. I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
Elevation idiot.
Oxygen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, they're down below me. And I was like, oh, wait, no.
Yeah, then he starts doing like circles. We're like, what is he doing? And the other thing, compared to the morning before, even though it was completely backwards. The morning before, we got a little bit of a late start, but the deer left early to go to bed.
Right.
And then the next morning, we got as early a start basically as possible. 5 minutes after daylight.
Right.
If
Maybe.
that. And the deer were just totally content staying out in the open and eating. I'm like, by the time he gets there, they're going to be in bed for sure. Well, they weren't. They were 30 yards from where we saw them. And it didn't take you that long to get over there. But that's the part where you start going slow. So we were only 40 minutes.
Yeah, and like you said, they were closer to their beds that morning.
Yep.
And they were, if they would have went at the same speed, it would have been like you said, it would have been meeting them.
Generally, no matter what, you're behind them. Like no matter how much you hustle, you're like you can't. It seems like you can't beat them there. And then this morning, they were just and it was pretty much the same temperature. Like
Maybe a
nothing,
little cooler 'cause of the
just they do what they do, especially in the high country. You don't know what they're gonna do. They were totally content with just hanging out and eating some more that morning. So which was great.
Yeah.
Especially for the pack out.
Yeah. Well, oh man, if I would have shot him where I was, ooh.
Yeah, I wasn't super pumped. That's why I told you to take your pack with you because I didn't want to carry your pack, my pack, and everything up there to you. And I thought maybe there was a small chance that I could have saw him when he got to the bottom.
So I work my way from right to left, and again, there's this. It's just like a patch of trees with some greenery in it,
And it's rocks and it's steep.
Oh yeah, but where they're coming up is like even steeper.
Yeah.
Because I literally got cliffed out. It was like a straight fall off. Now the deer had, like I said, these chutes to walk up into this bedding area, we'll call it. But how big do you think that area was? Like, 150 yards, 200 yards long, and only like 100 yards wide.
The whole thing, or
Yeah,
just where they were
the
coming
whole
up?
thing.
Oh no, I think it's bigger than that. Because you were,
Oh, yeah?
you still had a third. You were only 2/3 of the way up it, and you were way up it, and yeah, it's probably a couple 100 yards wide though.
Yeah, because I remember when I got to that bench and I ranged up, it was over 100 yards.
Yeah,
Right.
so and you were kind of right in the middle.
In the middle of it.
Yeah, so it's a couple 100 yards wide, and I don't know, 3, 4. Depending on where you want to start, call it that area, but it's probably 400 yards, which seems very small.
you're looking at a
when I
whole
just
mountainside.
when I just said that, it seems very small, but it's such a big place to try and get a deer killed with an arrow.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I work my way all the way over, and like in these rocks that I'm in is like short quakies and a couple really short pine trees. And right below it are these chutes where the deer were in. And I didn't know how close I was to the deer. I remember looking at you guys once, and I couldn't tell like what Shane was doing with his hands. I couldn't tell if he was saying stay. I thought he had his hands up like this, like going, I don't know.
Well, and we were trying not to be too confusing because there was like the one spot we thought that you should just stay. So we were telling you to stay, and then we're like, okay, he didn't get it. And then you moved a little bit, and we're like, well, now he needs to go. So then we go from stay to, well, now you gotta go, know? So, and then at a certain point, we're like, you know what, man, like he's close enough now. We can try and hand signal or whatever, but he's close enough now. And from our angle, we don't know what he's looking at. Like, I don't we didn't want to like tell you to stay and you can see 6 feet in front of you everywhere. So we're like, I think he's just figuring it out, and that's kind of how,
That's how it has to happen.
that's how it is. And like to back all the way up, like it wasn't to punish Garrett or anything, to send him by himself, not knowing anything. He's, in my mind, I figured he's a good enough hunter that he's going to figure it out. And I think that route is way better than me going with him, eat twice the noise,
Twice every day.
And it's not like we're going to, not talk, we're going to whisper to each other and come up with a plan. And it just, even those things, I think it's better just to send somebody on their own, even if it was going to take him 4 or 5 tries to learn how to do it. I think you're better off than to send 2 people at once. Cause you were still 60, 80 yards away and you like ticked a rock and they immediately went from feeding to looking up the hill.
Yeah. So that was
and they were 100 feet below, elevation wise or vertical wise, they were way below you. And the wind wasn't blowing that way. The sound shouldn't carry that way or anything. And I mean, he ticked a rock and they just swung up and looked straight uphill.
So that's where we're at right now. So Robert and Shane can see me and the deer. Shane is filming. Way to go, Shane. Best cameraman a guy could ever want. And again, so Shane's laying it all down on film. And pretty much where I'm at, I didn't know exactly where the deer were. And so, like, I'm just kind of trying to figure out where the deer are, like the end. And so as I'm kind of cliffed out, there's all these short quakey trees. If there were no quakey trees, it'd have been great. I could have just peeked over and seen them.
Right.
But
they probably could have saw you too.
Yeah, right. And so I caught a glimpse of the big 3-pointer. And I just had enough time in the hole to literally range him. And he was 65 yards, kind of walking what I thought was up the hill, but he had changed and must have came down the hill because I went up.
Yeah,
right?
It was kind of a side hill, downhill or what. And they were still, which is crazy. They're still eating on that steep of a hill that's almost vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I walked up like another 6 or 8 feet just to get around a big patch of quakies to try to see. And when I did that, like you said, there was a rock, maybe, I don't know, like the size of a lunch pail. And I like stepped on it and it just rolled once over. And I was like, oh my God. Like I could just see it like going all the way down the hill because it's so steep right there. So I literally like hooked it with my boot and like very carefully lifted my boot off of it to make sure it wasn't going to fall. And then I had a hole like the size of a basketball and I could see the 4-pointer was getting a drink out of the seep, and he was pretty much quartering dead away from me at that time.
Right.
And so I knew, like, all right, I'm in a bad position to try to draw my bow. And I got around, and by that time, the 4-pointer had worked his way back down, walking towards the 3-pointer, which I didn't know. And I ranged, and I put my rangefinder in. I was like, clipped on. He's 51 yards. Like, oh, hold on. Like, I need to figure out because like I was looking down on top of him.
Yeah, and most people miss high.
Thank God I didn't. I re-ranged and I looked and there was 51 yards, but my cut was 40. And to give you an idea, the deer was like pretty much quartering extremely hard to me, but I could see, like, it wasn't a broadside shot. I saw the top of his back. Like I could see the tops of his shoulder blades. Like I couldn't see any white on his belly or nothing. And my biggest fear is that the hole through the quaky trees was like, I don't know, maybe 6 feet away from me. And I'm like, my arrow's going to have to, it's going to leave my bow high.
Yeah.
So I drew back and anchored, and then I crouched down to where my 40-yard pin was at the very bottom of the hole. And that's when I sent it, man. And my arrow went in just right of center, went through his backstrap and came out the bottom of him.
Yeah, the bottom of his belly.
Yeah.
Like what if you were going to gut him, like dead center, where your knife would go up the bottom, and it was 2 inches to one side of his backbone. So basically top to bottom.
Yeah.
And it was only 8 inches back, towards his butt from where it went in the top of his back. So it was pretty vertical.
Yeah. I mean, really vertical.
Yeah. It was pretty straight up and down. Well, whenever the distance is 51 and your cut is 11 yards off of that, it's pretty steep.
So Robert was in the spotting scope. Again, Shane filmed all this. This is going to be really cool to show you guys. But Robert, you said you were watching it, right?
Yeah, so I was I was watching. I couldn't quite. I have a 95 millimeter spot and scope, but I couldn't still quite get Garrett and the deer in the spot and scope. I could, but it was like edge to edge, and all I could really see of Garrett was maybe shoulders up. Just basically his face is all I could see in the trees. And we were actually worried, and Garrett didn't even know, there's a doe that comes out of nowhere. It wasn't the doe that was with the bucks. She was down with the other 4x3 in the bottom. There's a doe 20 yards from Garrett staring at him for like 20 minutes while he's rolling rocks around and doing whatever he's doing up there, and trying to maneuver to get to a position where, and luckily she held, and I don't think she ever could really see him, and the wind was all right.
Yeah.
So that was good, but we were nervous. I kept swinging, so I was swinging from the doe to Garrett to the other bucks, back and forth, and I just happened to be looking at Garrett, and I told Shane, I said, he's drawing back, and I think that's when Shane zoomed the camera in.
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't think you could see him right there. I thought if this was going to work, they're going to walk up and they're going to be 8 yards. And I didn't think Garrett could see him from there. And I said, he's drawn back. And then Shane got on the camera, and I immediately swung to the deer. I didn't know which one he was going to shoot. And right when I did, I actually saw the lighted knot going through the air and hit the deer.
Which is pretty kind of crazy, right?
Yeah. I wish I would have been videoing it through my phone scope, but I mean, I'll never forget it. I saw it plain as day going through, hitting the deer, and then everything kind of exploded after that.
And then that deer jumped it's a easy way to jump far downhill, but he jumped
long ways.
I don't know how
20
far.
yards
At least.
Yeah, he jumped to where the other deer
was standing.
Like you would think he was going to hit, like in the video, you think he's going to hit the ground, and he goes twice that far from where you think he should hit the ground.
And so I saw my arrow go, and I mean, how many people practice shooting deer directly above them? Like I never did. And so I'm like, it was the only shot I had, and I felt like it was the best opportunity I was going to get. I just worked my ass off to get up there, and I just thinking what you guys had told me, and it's like you just got to make it happen, And so I saw the arrow sink, and I was like, I felt it was good, but it's so different around here. Like I immediately lost him, right? I was shooting through something the size of a basketball, and I ran around to the other edge and drew my bow back and had another arrow, and I couldn't see anything. No deer except for one doe, which was 100 yards away staring back at me. And I was clueless that the deer went down. I was totally thinking, man, I don't know, because I was aiming dead center of the spine.
Right.
And I'm I only hit probably one lung. Fuck, I'm going to have to, wait it out. Hopefully Robert and Shane can see him. I look over just really quick, and Shane and Robert are doing the whole hands in the air. And I was like, yes, they knew I hit him, because I didn't know if you guys could even see the deer.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It looks totally different for me.
Exactly.
I couldn't see you guys from where I was at. And so I was on cloud 9, mission accomplished, loosed an arrow on a mountain high country mule deer. And I went back to get my pack, and I walked my ass all the way back to the fucking glassing point, and they were gone.
We were already halfway to his deer. His deer died in. So he hit them. They jumped downhill, and there's kind of a rock outcropping cliff, whatever you want to call it. And there was I don't even know where the doe went. Honestly, she went the other way. But so the 3 deer started to run around there, and the big 3-point came out, and the little buck and Garrett's didn't. And I was like, oh, he's going to die behind that cliff. And then if you guys watch the video, you'll see it. Shane videoed the whole thing. Then he started to kind of back up down the hill, and then he died basically. Yeah. And he rolled he was dead. Garrett didn't know, he's kind of freaking out. Oh, did I hit this deer good and everything? He was dead in 30 seconds. and Garrett has no idea. So we thought he got the point because when we were doing that wasn't because you hit the deer. We saw the deer was dead. He was laying in the bottom with his legs up. He was dead. He wasn't kicking anything. So we packed up all our stuff, or actually unpacked stuff. I left my bow, left my spot and scope, anything that I didn't need to carry. Basically, just took my bag and a knife up there. And so Shane and I start walking across there. We get halfway to Garrett's deer, and he's back to where we were.
I was like so excited. Like I wasn't really tired then because I was like super excited to come see you guys, and I'm like hustling, and I was like, oh yeah, I can't wait to like turn my.
And then we weren't even there.
And I'm
Didn't
like,
even leave him any water or nothing.
And then, dude, I was because I went up, came down, and then was trying to catch you guys. So I was walking probably faster than I should have been because I'm like, oh, I got to get to him. There's no way I could catch you guys, and I was like dead.
Yeah, oh yeah.
When I got back to you guys again.
Yeah, doing it twice. At least what he did where he shot him was steep, but it was, I don't even know how to quantify, 500 times better than where you shot from.
500, yes. And he rolled. I mean, how far?
I think he
200 yards?
I bet he went 40 yards and died and then rolled another, I don't know. Well, he probably ran further than that because it was all downhill. But yeah, that if he would have, say you shot him with a gun and it stoned him right there, it would have been bad. It wouldn't have been as easy as it was.
And it wasn't easy.
And it wasn't that great.
No. So we get to him, I put my hands on him, and then we packed him out. And that like, I remember on the goat hunt with you, like it was a bitch. The slide rock patches were the worst things that I remember just because it was like every step you just were uncertain.
Yeah.
And I know I had more weight on me this time coming out, but my fucking butt cheeks and legs were on fire.
Garrett was walking in front of me for a little while, and I was laughing at the way he was walking because you can tell, like, you can't just pick your feet up like normal. You kind of like do this hip swing thing, and then I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm just walking. It's heavy, but I'm just walking. Then Garrett gets behind me, and he's like, dude, you're walking exactly how I was. I'm like, I am? Like, I'm trying not to.
Well, you did do like the little double right foot shuffle.
I don't know what was going through my head, and I was getting a little tired because it was, I mean, it's heavy. I mean, I didn't want any more. I mean, I could have maybe done a little more. And when I say a little, like 5 pounds. But yeah, I don't know what I was. Must have been getting tired, and I stepped two times. Right. Yeah, I did right, left instead of right, left, right. I don't know what that was.
But yeah, so we got back. We got him cut up, and I mean he's froze solid, and that's a wrap. We were then trying to get on a really cool deer for Robert. It's like a big mainframe 4-point with, I don't even know if you call that a kicker or an.
We call it an inline.
An inline.
Yeah.
And so we had a couple different stocks on him. One yesterday morning.
Yep.
Which the deer's smart, man.
Yeah, I guess I didn't give him enough credit. I didn't think. I don't know if he's just smart. If he's smart or just lucky. Like yesterday, he bedded in a spot that I never really been and looked at Onyx and stuff and thought if I came over the top of him that I would be 60 yards max. Well, that would have been the closest he was. So
yeah, he was 88
and he was in
yeah, you could only see his horns.
Yeah, the brush was way too tall, and I really thought today was the optimal.
It was awesome. We watched that deer all morning,
but both morning it's been a weird. Right. It's been a weird deal, and they've already been on edge before. Yesterday was a coyote barking and stuff, and he took off. And
today was another hiker with their dogs.
The dogs were barking at it. And they left, came back, and then left again. And which it was great where they went. Today, kind of. It's 2 of them. He's with 2 bucks, and I made a pretty good trek around there, and it was late.
It was super late.
9:30?
Yes.
Or you know what? I left the truck at 9:50. But by the time we finally decided to get around there, it was 9:50, I think, or 8:50. One or the other, but it was late for as hot as it is, and I got around there, and I got 16 and 17 yards from the 2 little bucks and thought he was going to be there, and I had a ton of time, and I kind of made the decision that I needed to get my binoculars up, and even though I was close and might booger them other 2, but I was like, I got to take a chance here and see if I can pick out his horns or something, because he wasn't by those other bucks, and little did I know that he was 140 yards away, bedded in a completely different area than those little deer. So,
and to back it up, so we had found these deer real early in the morning. They were feeding out on a flat. And then we thought we knew where they were going to go, hiker and dogs come out, dogs bark, deer take off. So then we made a big ass loop to get around on the other side of a bend to relocate them, which we did. This was still really early.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, we can maybe make a play on them. Well, the deer then
Went back.
They didn't have enough food, I guess, went back to the flat. We did another big ass loop to get exactly where we were in the morning when we saw them. And we watched them. And then so the thing is this flat, when it rolls off, you can't see. That's why we had
From
to
the
keep,
one side, yeah.
that's why we had to keep going over and over. So once we knew those deer committed and the sun was well up, like we were
Oh, yeah, it's
talking,
hot.
it was hot.
I was sweating before I started walking.
Yeah.
It sucked.
and so like we knew the deer were going to go back and finally bed. So all 3 deer, they'd been within a 20-yard circle of each other all morning, and we lose them over the ridge. We go back around. We find them again, but when we find them, I mean, mind you, we hustled as fast as we could to get back around.
Yeah, it was, 10 minutes?
Maybe. And so like we found both the small deer and the 3x4 bedded already. And we're like,
We watched the 2-point bed. The 3x4 was already bedded.
yeah. And we're like, okay, he's got to be right there. And then we sat there for 20 minutes and you picked apart all those little cedar trees with a spotting scope. But the thing that was like the big reason why we thought he was in there, for me anyway, is like we could just barely see that 3-point, like
Yeah. And it wasn't like super dense either. And I mean, that's hindsight on these things is literally every time you go out and try and hunt one, you always think what you could have done. And I mean, I even said it, I was like, man, I know better. I know I need to know where that deer is, but it wasn't that big area and it wasn't so that dense that I was like, man, I think I can get in there. And I mean, he's only got a few options. The shade's only on, the one side of the trees, and there's 5 clumps of trees,
Right.
And we know that there's 2 deer, where they're at. He's got to be, and looking at it, I was like, I think it's going to be pretty tight. I didn't know it was going to be that tight when I got in there, before I could see him. I was like, I get within 30 yards of those deer. Surely he's 30, 40 yards away from them. And I'm,
still within range.
Still within range. Well, yeah, it wasn't. He was 120 yards from where those deer were.
Which is, I mean, you would not have, I mean, I would say that's not typical.
No, I don't think so. And I don't know, that deer he's different. Because then when they did booger out of there, the 2 deer went one way and he crossed them going the other way and went a long ways the opposite direction of where those 2 went. So I think we're going to
give him a little breather.
Give him a little breather. I'm headed up to help a buddy. It's got a really good elk tag, so I'll be gone for 4, 5, 6, 9 days, whatever. And then he'll be stripped when I come back and see
You
if I
think
can.
that's what I was going to ask
Yeah,
you? He'll be hardhorn?
Yeah, I think he will be, and then see what he does then, or I may never see him again. That's what our deer do. Like, you might not ever see him again, or he might show back up in rifle season or something. But I'm not too worried about it. I'll have a couple weeks of archery left to kill a deer and an elk, and I haven't even thought about elk yet. Garrett's like, shoot one of those elk, shoot one of those elk.
I was begging him to try to shoot one of those bulls.
If we had horses up here, we would do it, but we're
man.
gonna be heavy enough with a deer.
Dead serious though, like, and that's like I guess the kid in me, like wanting you to go after those bulls. Like, I don't think we could have done it in one trip. Maybe. The 3 of us, like, I know how.
Man, it's tough with your camp. I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
I don't want to exaggerate it or speak, but I know I was 80 pounds on the way back. I had to. I mean, I was 55 going in,
Yeah.
and then I had a hind quarter and backstrap, and I ate 2 freeze dried meals. Like, I mean, I had everything, and that's without the odd and end stuff, that you don't really count your binoculars on your chest and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, no, probably not.
Because I don't know how heavy I was. We didn't weigh it, but I mean,
More than me. I
Yeah,
don't.
'cause
Everything you have is like made out of lead or something. I don't know, but your pack is what 2,500 cubic inches bigger than mine, and it was just as full.
well, I had a hind and a backstrap,
And the head.
the head, and then all my camera gear,
Yeah.
plus all the camping gear.
Yeah.
It felt fucking heavy.
Yeah, it was.
But that,
heavy.
like,
We were all heavy. Just I don't know. Like I told Garrett, I was like, whatever. For
Once
me,
it gets over 50 pounds, it's fuck.
yeah, and me, I'm a little bit smaller, but
Yeah.
When I get to 35 pounds, then it's like, yep, that's 36, that's 37, that's 38. You know, like
shit.
every pound matters. You start cutting your toothbrush in half and stuff, so you don't have to carry the weight.
Yeah. Because, I mean, an elk is way bigger than a deer.
Yeah, we did one. My wife killed one, and we boned it out, and I had the majority of it, and that was 96. I had 96 pounds. I weighed it when I got back. It was 96 pounds,
Jesus, man. Well,
and that was with 4 of us.
right. 4.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that was a day hunt.
and I didn't have a camp.
That's what I was saying. It was a day hunt.
Yeah, I had my spot and scope and tripod. You know, so then I was 96. 96. I think I carried the head out. I can't remember if she did or I did, but yeah, I was 90. I was 96 on that one. So yeah, killing an elk back there. I mean, we could have. I could have, got a hold of my dad on the inReach and had him bring horses. But man, it's just such a far. And I don't know, and the elk thing. I kind of like when they start bugling and stuff. I don't mind. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll sneak up on one and shoot one, but it just didn't interest me right now. So
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough, dude. I mean, you and Shane both.
yeah, it was awesome, man. I couldn't, and I don't want Garrett to ever downplay it. Like it is a super big accomplishment in my eyes and if anybody doesn't think it is, I'd like to have a conversation with them and just see their point of view. But to kill a deer up there in their home in that kind of country, like no matter what it is, we won't get a 4-point, like it's a huge accomplishment. I mean, making it to camp is an accomplishment.
That's what I was gonna say. Like anybody that doesn't think that this is hard, like you said it when we were talking.
Yeah, I can come hunt with me anytime.
Just come walk there.
Yeah,
just to camp,
Yep.
not to even where the hell the deer were.
Yeah, just grab a water bottle and tennis shoes and come try it. Just walk to camp. Yeah,
Jesus,
no, it's fun. I love it though. It's one of them things like can be every step sucks. Like on the way out, your mind can kind of start to wander that way.
No.
Like every time,
good.
For me, my right foot hits a little more, so it sucks. It sucks more when my right foot hits, but then when you get back to the truck and you get home, you get rested up a little bit, and you're like, man, I kind of want to go right back.
No shit.
Yeah. And at least we had this deer around here to keep our mind kind of occupied for a couple days, so it's been fun, man, and appreciate you coming out. And
Well, I couldn't done it without you.
yeah, and you're welcome anytime. It's been fun. I hunt a lot by myself. It's been fun having somebody there, even though I haven't even drawn my bow back yet. So
No.
it's been been a fun season so far, and we're only 4 days into it. Yeah. So
Well,
yeah,
good
it's been
luck on
awesome.
your elk hunt, and I guess we'll call this a wrap. Don't waste it.